Why don't you go through the profile a little bit? Give the listeners the profile.
Yes. Gwen came to us at 43 years old, very ambitious and a committed athlete to the sport of triathlon. She was really passionate about it and wanted to have better success, which is very common. And she was going through a lot of cyclical frustration of just being injured. So she was competing in all distances of triathlon and all distances of running. And she was either showing up to her race injured or she was showing up after being injured with a lot of low confidence. Both situations resulted in poor race performance and just really not enjoying the process, always in fear of, am I going to be injured? How am I going to perform?
It's going to resonate with a lot of athletes. It's incredibly frustrating. Ultimately, it often drives people out of the sport because of frustration. When you're highly ambitious, you want to achieve your goals, and you're just getting sidelined, not because of laziness or lack of motivation, but your body just not cooperating. So we will go into challenges straight away, and we have to start with the sort of injury cycles and what they were like for her, because I think it's really important. So firstly, most of her injuries were lower body, so low back, hips, but particularly around knees, calves, Achilles. So classic sort of what you would call running injuries, overuse injuries. I should say that there really wasn't anything for Gwen around nutrition, like under fueling per se. We are going to talk a little bit about nutrition, but most of her injuries were more mechanical in nature, we felt. In fact, there's an old adage that if you're consistently getting injuries, knees or down, that tends to be around training structure a little bit more, or maybe some supporting habits. Knee up, if you're getting stress fractures up in the hip or anything, that tends to be quite correlated to nutrition. So this wasn't any sort of eating component so far as in the classic sense of the word. But I think the biggest challenge for Gwen is the magic word of performance, she never able to hit consistency. She would do a few weeks of training, something would pop up. She'd have really compromised recovery, trying to think out of the box to get there, get back to health, start to build again.
Something would come up.
2 or 3 weeks of training, pop, something else goes. And as you said, incredibly debilitating emotionally, practically, and physically to try and go and race when you're either navigating pain or you're healthy, but you've had a really poor run up so far as training consistency. So I think that was the challenge. That's what we want to focus on today, mostly.
Yep. I think we should start with training. So going into the diagnosis of, what was the issue? What was happening behind the scenes that was creating this cyclical injury cycle for her?
Well, I didn't train Gwen directly. She was a purple patch athlete, of course. But one thing I do know is it was what I think is very, very common, and I'll label it as a fixed mindset around training. And she was a triathlete, so she had 3 swims, 3 bikes, 3 runs. Of the 3 swims, there was one that was interval based, whether it's threshold or high intensity. There was one that was endurance based, and then there was one that was a little easier. The bike, same pattern, high intensity, whether it's threshold, high intensity, whatever it is. Big resilience one, easier one. Run, same thing. So it was 3, 3, 3 separate going through. She had a fixed number of training hours that she wanted to hit every week. She was a little bit higher on training, so she was about 14 hours a week, which I know doesn't sound high for some people, but higher than most athletes. And her definition of success was hitting those hours. And then I think the one thing that was very, very important in her case is she followed a routine of 3 training weeks in a row that you could designate as higher load. Sometimes they progressively built up. Sometimes they were all trying higher training load. So she had the classic, this is the normal 3 training weeks in a row, and then 1 week of full designated recovery. And that was classic, and it clearly wasn't working. And we're going to dig into that. The other thing I want to point out before we talk about what do we do with this fixed mindset, 3 up, 1 down, 3 sports broken up the same way, is we're not going to go into habits too much on this, but I did make a note here that we did adjust some of our habits as a part of this. We did have her increase her protein. But that's common across all athletes. Most athletes are not consuming enough protein. We did increase her total calorie count on a day-to-day basis. We did introduce a much heavier focus on post-workout fueling that we talked about in our most recent case study as well. And we did focus on daily hydration as well. So those were there, but I don't think they were huge indicators on injured or not injured. And for the pursuit of this show,
Will not focus on
we're
it.
not going to focus on that. So just know that it's not just about training ever. So we should at least tip our hat to it. What we should go into is a little bit of intervention here. So what did we do with Gwen with this overall focus and challenge?
Yeah. So, like any good intervention with an athlete, the first thing that's really important is helping the athlete set the lens, getting, agreement on how we're going to approach this challenge. And for her, it was starting with the overarching training structure of this 3 weeks on, 1 week off.
Yeah.
Later, there was changes that were made. There were changes that were made to the specific workouts and what she was doing on a day-to-day basis. But the big thing at first was getting out of this 3 week on, 1 week off, and actually getting ahead of recovery and shifting to a 3 week cycle, which you can break down for listeners.